thing, and then we hit the button on Facebook, right? Because like
yeah, so it's something
hashtag
super
bonus
fancy.
content.
Yeah. You let me know whenever I can start.
Video. All right, so I think I have stuff.
Okay.
I feel like I'm forgetting something.
Or maybe you're just
I can do
getting
that. I can even do this.
quicker.
Nathan Dickey of Trolling with Logic. This here we're even do better this afternoon, Nathan. And you can tag Natalie.
Always tag
There's
me.
you. And Broadbent are live with Nathan Dickey of Trolling with Logic. Check out their full site. Okay. Is that everything?
I think that
Yes.
probably is everything. I think let's just, I think we're probably good. Yeah.
What are things though? What is, I don't even know.
Yeah.
Like now I'm having like an introspective existential crisis.
Oh God. This is my life. This is my podcast partner.
But not your podcast life partner.
I mean, we could just do this together for the rest of our lives. This podcast every week for the rest of our lives, Dan. Me and you, old and skeptical.
You got these snips before we go to the masses on Facebook. Oh, right. And then that means I don't need to be recording on. God damn it! Like that was what I don't need to be recording my own local copy. Oh. Okay, I think we are good to go. Natalie, say something. So, and then
okay.
Cal, or I mean, whatever you choose to identify as is between you and God.
All right, I'm ready to go. So
okay,
all
right,
same here.
Gotcha.
Right.
Yeah, and it's recording both you guys.
Okay, cool. All right, I'm gonna just intro and we're gonna talk. And Nathan, everything looked like decent, yeah, in the Google Doc. And hopefully nobody fucked with the Google Doc this time, because
right.
People like to fuck with the Google Docs. All right.
So, we're on Facebook.
This afternoon, we are thrilled to be joined by our friend Nathan Dickey. Nathan, who appreciates nihilist memes, discussions of cannibalism, and really good dad jokes, is also a writer and host of the fantastic Trolling with Logic podcast. And Nathan used to be a Christian, like a Christian apologist type of Christian. So we've got a lot to talk about. And thank you for joining us, Nathan. Welcome.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm a big fan of the show. It's great to be here.
Yay. See, we have a listener.
I was going to say, first question, why?
Why? Because semen.
I was going to say, come for the cum, stay for the...
Cum.
That is a big draw for the show. And I would like to say that I merely tolerate dad jokes. I don't necessarily appreciate them.
Oh, well, it's okay. That we will not hold that against you, because So let's start. I mean, like your story, because I mean I've met you, sort of through the internet as a atheist skeptic, host of a podcast in our little awesome podcasting world. And I would have never expected that you had this whole Christian believer past. And then, I mean, we'll link to it in the show notes, but your the blog post that you wrote about being a, teenage apologist pretty much is fantastic. It's a fantastic story of this full journey from being a believer to being a skeptic. And we're going to talk more about it, but I want to just start with your childhood. What was it like? You were just raised with belief, I guess.
See, I had all this prepared. I was expecting you to ask a slightly different question. Okay, can you ask the question again?
Yeah. So, okay. So when I was reading your post, you said you declared yourself a Christian at the age of 7. So you took Christianity as a like factually true like worldview, right?
Yeah, that's how it was presented. It was from as early as I can remember, I was just taught that this is the way it is. So, of course, we were taught about faith and what faith was, but whether intentionally or not, my family and my church just emphasized that this is the way the world is. And so, as a young child, I just thought that's the way the world is because socialization.
Yeah. And so like, so that's the way the world was. And then what was the Bible to you? Was that real? Like,
it was taught as the literal word of God transcribed through human authors, and that it revealed the thoughts of God and what he wanted for humans. And so it was to be taken as a guide to life and how to interact with others and what to believe.
Of course, because you can't prove it's not.
Right.
right. So therefore true, therefore God wrote or had humans write down all of his thoughts that we just must live by and all of that stuff. So did you, like, people around you, were they people, and it could have been you, it could have been your family or people you knew, were there people that were like God created the world and Noah built an ark and all that shit type of stuff?
Everybody that I knew growing up believed that stuff. There were no beliefs that differed from the mainstream among people that I knew. It was all we socialized with people who believe the same way we do. I was homeschooled for the entirety of my K through 12 education, and throughout my childhood and teen years, my entire social circle consisted of the Baptist church. My family attended at least twice a week and literally twice on Sundays. All the kids in that church were homeschooled. So yeah, I didn't encounter a diversity of opinion until later on.
And it's almost like that's by design. Like they want to alienate you from really anything that contrasts with what they believe.
Yeah, it wasn't a cult though. Everybody.
Oh, those are your words. Those are your words. I did not say all religions are cults. Just
right. But it had the
versions of cults. I did not say that.
Right. The way I described it myself might lead people naturally to think it's a cult-like setting. It actually wasn't, although it had the potential to become that. All the families who attended the church and homeschooled their kids led otherwise pretty normal lives, although that kind of lifestyle does lead to dysfunction in some cases.
So, so you're kind of in this world where, everyone, kind of believes the same thing. The kids are homeschooled, the families all go to church together, everything. Were there ever discussions amongst you and your friends about like, hey, this stuff seems a little funny, like God did all this stuff, or like what's going on outside of our little world? Like, was there internal sort of discussion and questioning among anybody?
Not that I can recall early on. As I became a teenager, our church did discuss in some adult Sunday school classes and things like that what the outside world believes and why, according to them, they were wrong. And so I was exposed to a little bit of outside thought, but always in the context of apologetics. So personal questioning was not very many frowned upon. I don't recall any of my peers actually coming out and asking real serious hard questions about their own beliefs.
I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to say, well, you were Baptist, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so my personal experience with Baptist church is limited to one Sunday in college with of course, with a girl, and that's just like, I don't even know how to. If you're bored on a Sunday morning and you're awake, like, it's just something unique. We'll say, is that a nice way of saying that, compared to just a typical, like, what I was raised Catholic, so compared to Catholic, it was just like, whoa.
So it was some experience for you, some like wild, exotic. I went to Baptist church one Sunday with a girl.
It was just. I mean, I don't even know how to put it into words here. It's just, they're so just, we'll say, excited about Jesus.
Yeah, they're
On fire for the Lord.
If you go to any Protestant denominational church, compared to Catholics, they will be more enthusiastic. But within Protestantism itself, Baptists are actually on the more reserved side. There's the Pentecostals and the Charismatics. Compared to the Baptists, they are far more enthusiastic and exuberant than the Baptists were.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt that. I don't even touch Pentecostal. That's just
not staying away from that.
For example,
there's so many things.
Yeah, like, we didn't speak in tongues. We actually thought that was a heresy. So
you're like, that's a little extreme for us. Like,
that's a little too crazy.
Yeah, it's a little too crazy. There's like a hierarchy of like the crazy shit. So it wasn't Jesus. Like, you didn't go to Jesus camp.
No. Thank God. Or thank.
It's like what's that guy's name? That makes the long-haired, like, red-haired hippie, JP Sears. Like, it's okay for him to, like, endorse Woo, because he makes fun of, like, all the other bullshit that he doesn't believe in, but then while subscribing to his own version of the more bullshitty of bullshit.
Yes, that. So okay, so you're not in full on like Jesus camp mode, which is awesome. And by the way, if anybody is listening to this and doesn't know what Jesus camp is, it's my favorite horror film ever, but it's actually a documentary about,
I haven't seen this.
Oh, Dan. Oh, you need to watch it. It is
frightening.
And we need to talk about it because it's a horror movie, but it's children going to Jesus summer camp, and they speak in tongues, they protest abortion, like, with tape over their mouths. It's horrifying. And like, yeah, it's fucking horrifying. So, watch it. Anyone who's listening, just watch it.
And this is a documentary. This is like,
it's a documentary. It's a documentary. So, So, okay. So Nathan, at least you weren't doing that, but were you expected to, or did you want to, like, do the whole, like, evangelism type of thing?
The kind of evangelism I wanted to do, there are different types of evangelism. One is like, you can be a pastor or a minister of some kind. I wanted to go into apologetics specifically, which is a very specific type of evangelism.
Can you talk about what that is and what it's meant to accomplish?
So apologetics is from the Greek word apologia, defense of the faith. It's basically acquainting yourself with all the objections the outside world has to your faith and defending your faith, going on the defensive. And it's taking what you already believe and working backwards, defending what you already believe at all costs from any intellectual attacks on it that you encounter. So
like, if I said, God didn't create the world in like a fucking week or whatever, what would somebody say to, like, back to that?
Then the creationist apologist would then launch into a series of supposed evidences that the earth is young and that there are signs of a creator doing things.
Yeah.
So essentially, nuh-uh.
Pretty much.
But A glorified version of because they apologists attempt to defend the faith using reason. So they would not rely on the Bible as much as they would rely on supposedly scientific sounding arguments.
So like
and intellectual sounding arguments.
The way like the Answers in Genesis website tries to sound, where they're like, we're kind of sciencey. We like science. JK, we believe the world's really fucking.
I mean,
young.
they have a museum, so they call it a creation museum, so that means it's a scholarly place where.
Yeah, smart stuff happens. People know what they're talking about. Cowboys and dragons and dinosaurs.
Cowboys and dragons. I will.
But the reason it's strange is because the reason it's strange is because intellectual pursuits and intellectual / scientific / philosophical defense is not their overriding motivation. Their overriding motivation is to bring people into the flock and grow their religious congregation and spread the message of their religion. They don't care how they do it, because religion has suffered so much. Well, the claims of religion has been dealt several devastating blows from science. They feel like that's a worthwhile field to go into and pretend like they're presenting hard intellectual cases for the faith.
Yeah, well, like like the Christian movies where they try to like fight the idea of evolution and stuff. Wait, what was the one that you just was it called A Matter of Faith?
A Matter of Faith. Yep.
Where like I mean, they're making like these Christians are making movies that are essentially saying like, yeah, you science believing atheists are all wrong.
Evolutionists.
You evolutionists, like that's a derogatory term.
Like, okay,
like next time I'm like mad at someone while I'm driving, I'm just gonna be like, "You fucking evolutionist!" Like that could be like my new swear.
Well, no, it's like it's like saying, "Well, you human being that's operating a motor vehicle right now," like that's an accurate statement. It's yeah, evolution is a thing. Like it happens.
It's strange. Evolution was one of those buzzwords that had a negative connotation immediately upon use, no matter what context you were using it in, even if you were talking about evolution in some other sense than the biological, like the evolution of music or fashion. It was still a triggering word that people in my church heard it and they instantly reacted. They kind of cringed, and recoiled at the very word.
Because it's like the idea of anything changing. And I mean, really, when you think about it, it's like they're basing their life and beliefs on something that they believe was like, handed down by God however many years ago. And like, we are not evolving in those beliefs because, like that.
Well, yeah, they can't tolerate the idea that we aren't special because it's a cornerstone of their religious worldview that we are special somehow.
But like, are we special pretty much if we're just like straight white men and then everybody like I'm curious, like what were the attitudes towards like, homosexuality, just sex in general?
I bet they were way accepting and like way like cool.
So, just lay it on like this liberal believing church, I imagine.
Not so much. Homosexuality was, of course, condemned in the strongest possible terms, which is just par for the course for these denominations, these fundamentalist Baptist denominations. And my family and the church I grew up in taught very strongly that sexuality was something God had to be involved in. And
that's like...
when you put it like that, when you put it like that, it sounds creepy. But for myself now, looking at the religious worldview regarding sex from an outside perspective, that's what it boils down to me. Sex outside of marriage was, of course, strongly condemned. That's another typical thing in fundamentalist denominations. But it went beyond that. in my church, the concept of dating, it wasn't condemned as inherently sinful, but it was very much frowned upon, looked upon with suspicion, strongly discouraged, in fact.
I can just picture people like sitting, like looking upon a couple like of kid, like 15-year-olds like dating, like, what are they doing? Are they enjoying life?
Are they happy?
Are they happy? They don't deserve to be happy.
What is that
Too
thing they're
far off.
smiling? Yeah, it's like
Because everybody in the congregation, everybody who shared the faith, was considered a brother or a sister in Christ. So it was just one big family.
what is incestuous?
At least we're consistent.
So yeah,
that's like there's so much incest like involved, and like not my thing.
Dude, we have an entire fucking genocide and incest theme park.
Right, and like I'm not here to kink shame anybody, but I mean I might make an exception for like this one thing. Like
let's make that. Can we make that exception? Let's make that exception.
Take a hard stance and say like you shouldn't like fuck your siblings, but of course like we're all offspring of twice over.
Oh, I love doing this show with you.
So there was an alternative to dating, and it was called courtship, which had a specific meaning. Is essentially the fundamentalist version of dating. This involved seeing someone consistently, exclusively, and over a long period of a year or more. No sex, of course, during that time of seeing each other, and with a heavy emphasis on being accountable to the parents. So even stuff like kissing and other highly innocuous expressions of physical affection before marriage was frowned upon. You were supposed to pray very seriously, seeking God's approval of this courting relationship. And masturbation was condemned as well.
I was gonna ask about that. And because it will, and like
because of course you were.
Jenna. Well, no. I'm gonna go with Trolling with Logic co-host Jenna, who brought that up. So no, but I probably would have gone there anyways. But I'm gonna blame it on somebody else today.
We have to bring semen into this somehow. I would expect no less.
We have to. But so was that like? Was there a lot of like guilt and shame around just like general feelings of like, you know, of just human sexuality?
Just around feelings.
Just feelings. All feelings.
I have a lot of guilt and shame about feelings, but anyway.
Yeah, to an extent when it came up, which sexuality didn't come up a whole lot, but I was taught growing up that masturbation, for example, was basically robbing your future spouse of sexual joy because you're pleasuring yourself instead of making it a mutual thing that you share.
So like we only have so much to give, so we have to save it. Like it makes no fucking sense.
Masturbation was presented as selfish, essentially.
Oh yeah. Yeah, it is. Like that's the entire fucking point.
And that's okay. Yeah. Like that's
but
okay.
It was
to be selfish sometimes.
But it was presented as selfish in the wrong way, in the worst possible way of being selfish, as in you aren't supposed to be selfish towards others usually, and this applies as well.
Wow. So like it's amazing how like every aspect of life is sort of dictated and like looked over by this doctrine that just is, God, it's no fun. Like no fun. It's like, yeah. So you're going through like teenagehood and people are courting each other. I feel like that's like what the Duggars did, you know? And well, look how well they all turned out.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So like, so at what point did you start to see things a little differently? I know I read your like the final renewal of your faith, because I guess that was something that was like regularly done. You renewed your faith the final time at age 19. So it's like, what happened after that?
From that point on, I wanted to invest all my energy in apologetics and not appealing to faith or the Bible or general Jesus, just sticking to the intellectual pursuits and defending the faith from there. And that's how everything fell apart, or that's how my
because you started thinking.
yeah, that's how my faith fell apart.
Weird.
The final renewal of my faith was attended with no ceremony at all. Like, I didn't feel anything. Nothing was coming through because I wasn't trying to make myself feel anything, like put myself into an emotional state where I sense God's presence.
I was gonna say, up until we talked, since God's presence, like I was like, this is like an episode we can talk about. Like, I feel nothing. Different podcast. Sorry, different podcast.
But yeah, so I went to a apologetics conference the year before that, and was taught. It was a week-long conference that basically.
Where was that?
This was in Seattle, Washington, and it was a conference called Worldview Academy. Worldview Academy. It's a thing that still goes on every year.
Oh my gosh! Like Natalie, like.
Should I take a field trip there and learn apologetics? Want to go?
So,
can we go fund me?
Could you tell us, like, I guess with what you're saying, and like maybe somebody who's watching or listening that isn't as familiar with like the whole like debate and like arguing and about it and things, like what's like an example of like something somebody would say, and then like you had this like you said, without sourcing or referencing the Bible, like citing, like defending something that's completely unreasonable.
Like, for example,
well, okay, so is it like, did people try to talk about, someone saying like, oh, homosexuality is not it's not a sin. It's like, let's be like,
oh yeah. What
good to other people, all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
What apologists of the kind I hung around with would do is say, well, they would often change the subject first off, right off the bat, and say, well, do you believe in evolution? If they say yes, the apologists would say, well, homosexuality isn't compatible with evolution.
Therefore, checkmate.
And they would say, homosexuality aids, checkmate, because one argument that I came across was that when Paul in Romans said that homosexuals bear in themselves the penalty for their sin, that this was like a reference to AIDS. So that's one example of a kind of argument that an apologist would present.
Wow. So okay, so you go and you learn how to do all of this arguing and all of that. Like, and is it in that process that you're thinking this doesn't make sense?
Yeah, well, not initially. I went into it pretty enthusiastically, like a lot of the other students who were there, but I didn't have any ulterior motives about it, because late in my teenage years, I decided I wanted to not just believe for no reason because my parents and my church told me to. I wanted to have a reason.
You silly, rebellious teen.
Yeah.
Rebellious Christian.
And so that's why I pursued apologetics in the first place, was because I wanted to understand the actual reasons why we should believe this stuff. And so that was my motive going in. And eventually, the more I researched for the purpose of defending the faith, the more I realized that it was just indefensible.
Yeah. So see, and that is just interesting to me that you actually wanted to say, okay, if I'm going to believe this stuff, there better be a damn good reason why, and and this all better makes sense. And so why this like your story is interesting to me, because you took a skeptical view of it. I maybe hoping that it would make sense, but so I guess like I wonder, like, what advice would you give to somebody who is a believer and maybe having some doubts?
I would say read the Bible from start to finish, and not just read it, but read it as if you were discovering the book for the first time. Read it as if you had never encountered it before, and try to the best of your ability to read it without any kind of filter in place, faith or otherwise kind of filter. See what you find out. As Andrew Seidel has said, the road to atheism is littered with Bibles that have been read cover to cover. And I think that's a very true statement.
Well, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, and I think there was a similar like Penn Jillette quote where he was talking on an episode of Bullshit, pretty much of like where do atheists come from? Essentially, it's like people who've read the Bible, actually read the Bible, and like it's not the good book.
Not at all.
It is not.
The human
There's
origin.
some good stuff that happens, and we could just like that stuff. Just I mean, that was taken out of context. I'm sure.
Yeah, the context argument, that was a big one.
So people read the Bible, and then yes, I mean that definitely I think could do it as far as somebody questioning their faith and questioning what they have believed and all of that. Now, were there also like skeptics or atheist writers or any scientists, people who were instrumental in your sort of continuing your path to sort of skeptical and rational, philosophical thought?
Yeah, so during my freshman year in college, I discovered a book called Flim Flam, Psychic CSB, Unicorns and Other Delusions by James Randi, which influenced me in a huge way. As I'm sure you know, Randi is a magician, debunks and exposes a wide range of pseudoscientific claims and charlatans. He does this better than most scientists because scientists are not trained in the same way magicians are in the art of detecting trickery. Mm-hmm. So in that book, Randi goes after psychics, mediums, spoonbenders, water diviners. He examines a lot of fringe claims like the Bermuda Triangle, ufology, ancient aliens, that kind of stuff. This book was one of my earliest, if not the earliest, introduction I had to the skeptical movement. And he didn't address traditional religious claims in this book, but I immediately saw the applicability of religious claims to the process he was subjecting all these other kinds of beliefs to. And it was an eye-opening realization because throughout my childhood and teen years, I had been repeatedly told by my teachers that God cannot be put into a box and can't be studied inside a test tube, which is a peculiar thing to say for someone who, out of the other side of their mouth, says that the natural world is proof that God exists. So on the one hand, you can't study God scientifically, but on the other hand, the creation, the universe, reveals his existence.
Because like none of it actually needs to make any sense because we just need to believe, right? And that's where like all the meaning in life comes from, and all the all the good stuff. It's God, and he just like all the bad stuff, whatever.
The bad stuff is it
doesn't matter
because humans are evil.
It's our fault, and we're sinners, and whatever. But okay, so that just made me think of actually a question that that our friend Vance Crowe Monsanto. Mm-hmm. We just have to say Vance Crowe Monsanto hunk most shows, but people seem to cling often to religion and their belief because it's it's associated with their family, with the idea of community, with the idea of like meaning in life for whatever. But Vance brought up a question, like, all right, I'm just gonna pull it up here. So say we like accept this nihilistic proposition that life has no meaning, then does our existence matter, I guess? And if, does what we do matter? And if it means nothing, then are we responsible for anything? Vance, of course, was like posing all these questions, but I guess what I want to know from you, and this is, I think, something that's important for atheists to talk about, is like, where do you find meaning in life? You don't have religion. And you don't have God. Where does meaning come from for you?
Well, our existence doesn't matter, and there is no objective meaning to the universe. It's like in ancient Greece and ancient Rome, when they spilled the innards of cows and chickens and read the entrails to find meaning. It doesn't actually mean anything, and the universe is the same way. It doesn't mean anything, but we do exist, and by accident, and we have to deal with the reality we're presented with, and that means making some pragmatic choices about how we live our lives, and that involves, to a large extent, creating our own meaning for ourselves while we're alive, and dealing with other minds, other people. And
I think the real answer here is memes and cats.
Memes and cats.
Nihilist meme. Cats.
Yeah, if you're watching the video, you can see my cat is rubbing his face on my microphone right now.
And I would also point out that even in a universe where God exists, that doesn't change the meaning equation. So there is probably no God, and there is no ultimate meaning, but there is subjective meaning that we can live our lives according to. But say there is a God, so what?
Yeah.
Does that change whether or not we have meaning? Because if there is a God, either he lets us live our lives the way we want to and doesn't care, like the deist God, or if he does care and concerns himself with minutia, like genitals and what we do with them, then that's not meaning either, because he's just trying to dictate via fiat what we're supposed to do, and that's not meaning either. So either way, we have to deal with what we're given and make the best of it, or not. It's up to us.
It's our choice, and so I mean, you figure by whatever series of happy accidents or unhappy accidents, depends on how you look at it. Pretty much, we've all ended up here on this planet having these kind of wonderful conversations with Dan and his cat, and but I think that there's this misconception that if we don't have this belief in the sky fairy, then fuck, there's nothing, we have nothing. But I would argue that because we don't have the sky fairy, we have to find meaning, or we have to find things that matter, or reasons to continue this existence in as best of a way as possible. Let's not be fucking miserable. Let's make the best of it, all of it.
Vance also asked about responsibility and what role responsibility plays in a godless world. And I'm just going to pause for a second because I'm hearing my own echo.
Yeah, I was too. It should. I think it just went away though.
Yeah.
Okay. So Vance was asking about that, and I think a godless world makes the concept of responsibility more real and more pressing. With a God in the equation, presumably there's something he expects of us, otherwise his existence is not relevant to us. So say the God of Christianity exists, then the worldview of Christianity states that we're supposed to fob off our problems onto Jesus, and that Jesus's crucifixion is self-mutilation, human sacrifice, that he's supposed to be a scapegoat for all of our wrongdoings and all of our sins, so that the rapist and the murderer and the pedophile can be instantly redeemed upon praying to the scapegoat.
I'm super sorry for killing that guy. My bad.
Yeah, and you're in.
That's it. Like,
meanwhile, people who do great humanitarian efforts throughout their whole lives and sacrifice a lot in their personal lives to accomplish great good, the Bible says those people and all the things they're doing are worthless rags. So it's a completely twisted worldview when you really think about it.
Well, see, and that's the thing. It's like, and so, you know, key words, like when you really think about it. So at this point, the fact that some of this stuff, like that people will still go to like the Ark encounter and think that that's a real, like that's pretty much a real thing that happened. Like it speaks, and we talk about this a lot on this show, that like there's a lack of critical thinking in the world right now because people are still holding on to these like ridiculous beliefs that make no fucking sense, whether it's about science or issues of like social justice tied to religion. It makes no sense.
It is worrying because there's no way that our country is going to be competitive in today's global economic marketplace if the people in this country believe that Noah and his ark was a real thing that really happened.
Yeah. So then I guess the question is like, how does the next generation of like children, how do they grow up and do better? How do we raise a generation of critical thinkers? I know it's a huge question, but I like just any like thing that comes to mind is like, how do we try to, like, with our time on the planet, make it a little bit better?
So in the area of science education, and there are other areas, but in the area of science education, we need to emphasize the process of science rather than just present science as nothing more than a catalog of dry facts, which is unfortunately how science is mainly taught in primary education, as far as I know.
Right, because you were homeschooled, so.
Yeah, I've talked to people.
The best people, the greatest. Bigger.
Science is anti-authoritarian. It's about acquiring knowledge based on observation and testing that is performed independently of, prior beliefs or feelings we may have. So showing with confidence that we can conclude that evolution really happened, that Noah's Ark is bullshit, that the geologic column is a thing, and that the universe started 13.7 billion years ago, not 6,000 years ago. Showing these things without appealing to some higher authority, and showing that these are not real science does not consist of edicts from on high, but that it comes from things we have learned via a process that is transparent and that anybody can do in principle. That's the philosophy of science we need to teach in high schools, and not just the catalog of facts presented as this is the way it is. Because
teach the method for thinking.
Teach the method and the process.
Yeah.
And on the note of philosophy itself, it's an incredibly important tool to have. Like science, it's a process or method of thinking rather than like a subject unto itself. And its purpose and function is to help us become aware of our own cognitive biases that lead us astray into error and fallacies. So I think philosophy should be taught in primary education. And we need to instill in the next generation, and even in among our own peers, that when authoritarians like Ken Ham declare in so many words that we have to trust God, not the scientists, and actually that is something he has actually said, he is dismissing your ability as a human being to figure shit out for yourself. And
what just blows my mind about one of the many things that blows my mind about the Ark is everything, just like you said, like we need to be teaching people how to think instead of what to think, and the explanations behind it. Almost every single display on the actual Ark encounter is just this is what this happened, or what happened. This is what, is truth. And the skeptics say this, but that's wrong because of God. And like, that's literally like the best and most compelling argument they make at all is, well, God, nuh-uh. And then they set it up as a whole, like one world, two views. Like, well, they have their way of viewing things, and so this is our way of viewing things. And I guess trying to set up some sort of like, you're a bigot if you think that we're stupid, or not we're stupid, but this belief is stupid.
This is something that Ken Ham and other creationists harp upon all the time, is this false idea that somehow atheists and Christians are both using faith. And the purpose behind that tactic is to, if you think about it and consider it, it's really a confession of, or it's really admitting defeat. Because, hey, faith is not necessarily a good thing. The believers are realizing it's, believing without evidence and believing without reasons just because, and that's not good for us. So maybe if we say that, hey, it takes faith to be an atheist, they're doing it too. That's the argument from, but they're doing it too, basically.
Well, and they're seeking to elevate their own belief system by even saying, well, they have their view. This is an equally, or, according to us, more valid view because we say it is. So they're trying to legitimize their own argument by presenting it in that manner.
Yeah, and I could see that contrast right away when I first started the questioning process. One of the first things I did was read as much as I possibly could about evolution. And that was a process of discovery because I could see the methods and the approach being completely contrary to what I was taught that evolutionists approach things. And evolutionist is not necessarily a word that people call themselves, but scientists, biologists. The way they presented information was completely different than the way the creationists presented their information, and different from what they said the other side. So it was eye-opening, and I learned a lot in a pretty short period of time.
So I guess one question I have it just popped into my mind as you're talking about, like learning and exploring all these things that went, contrary to your previously held beliefs and the beliefs of your family, your community, all that stuff. What was your experience in terms of like your social world, your family, all that kind of stuff, as you questioned and then decided, oh, this is actually how I see the world? It's not the way that I grew up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat like the first part of that question?
So really, I'm just curious, like, what was your family's and your friends' reaction to your atheism, your skeptical thinking, like all of that? And is there any lasting, impact?
My parents and much of my family remain firmly Christian and Baptist and fundamentalist. Fortunately for me, they haven't gone the route, well, fortunately for them too, I guess, they haven't gone the route that a lot of religious parents of atheist kids do, and kind of distance themselves on the light end, and on the extreme end, disown them. That hasn't been the case in my family. I still keep in touch with my parents, and we have a good relationship, even though we have diametrically opposite worldviews, and they know that, and I know that, and we maintain a relationship anyway. my sister took not the same exact path I did out of religion, but she took her own path out of religion. And my 4 younger sisters still remain religious.
Yeah.
So the response is varied. My dad doesn't talk about religion or philosophy or science, those kinds of things. Those don't come up in our conversations. My mom and I have some interesting debates and discussions about what I think and what she believes. She sends me apologetics books on occasion, which I do appreciate and I do read, and because it opens up a venue of discussion. It refines my own views on God and religion, and our discussions hopefully can teach her and the rest of my family something as well.
So you can read those books and kind of know what the other side of things is thinking and believing. And another thing that I know you like to do to see what the other side of things thinks and believes is watch terrible Christian movies. So I want to end this by you telling us and our audience some of your favorite awful Christian movies that they should stop whatever they're doing right now once they finish the podcast and go watch, because Christian movies, for anybody who doesn't watch bad Christian movies or listen to god awful movies or whatever, they're just a level of terrible that's hard to describe until you sit down and start binge watching them, which I do.
It's the level of bad. It's the only transcendent thing that exists is Christian movies. So
I've only watched, I think I watched one 2 months ago. I don't like movies in general, so I don't watch movies, but
so
I watched what Right to Believe, and then what was that shitty? It was a documentary.
A Kirk Cameron one, and I'm forgetting the name of it.
Kirk Cameron. I almost said James Cameron. I was like,
it's
not James Cameron.
Was it called Monumental or something like that? Because he was going to all these monuments and found Christianity in the monuments, pretty much. It was awful. Yeah, and it was Kirk Cameron, and he never blinked the entire time. The entire movie, he didn't blink, and it was really scary. Because it was weird.
I couldn't deal with it.
I'm sorry.
It's
I told you to.
How do you notice little details? How do you notice little details like that, like the non-blinking? Because
he was just freakishly staring at the camera the entire time he was talking, and he's just Kirk Cameron, and he always looks like, I don't know. He's a creepy dude, I think. All right, so what are some of your favorite bad Christian movies?
There's so many to choose from, but I have a special thing for the end times apocalyptic Christian movies. So my favorite Christian movie of all time is probably A Thief in the Night, which came out in the 1970s, and it had 3 sequels. It's the campiest, corniest, cheesiest series of movies you could ever encounter. It's great. It has the mark of the beast. It has all the tribulation and rapture stuff in it. It's got in one of the later movies, I can't remember if it's the 3rd one or the 4th one, but the main character has a last minute conversion scene because she's been putting off Christ throughout the movies.
There's always an atheist, right? There's always a non-believer.
Well, these movies straddle a really weird line that Christian movies don't usually take on for themselves. It's the main protagonist gets left behind in the rapture.
Yeah.
But throughout the tribulation, she doesn't accept Jesus yet. She just kind of
that would be pretty fucking compelling evidence for me if everybody gets raptured.
Then I feel like you guys were right.
That happened. That's evidence. I will change my views now because this happened.
Check me, Christians. You guys were right. I would admit.
I was wrong. You were right. All right. Now nobody wins because now we're still all fucked here. But hey, You were right, and you may or may not have gotten raptured because you know what you did.
Yeah,
because you masturbated too many times or didn't think about God when you were doing it.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I would believe, but I wouldn't worship that kind of God.
Because he's a dick.
But so yeah, I mean, the makers of this movie had to present this character, this unbelieving character, as like persistent in her unbelief, even while everything's going to shit around her. So she's supposed to be relatable because she's the main protagonist throughout, and she hangs out with all the Christian people, but she doesn't really take Jesus into her heart, except in the very last movie. And I'm going ahead and give spoilers here because
she takes Jesus.
Damn it, Nathan.
She hasn't done the whole Jesus into her heart thing, but she also hasn't taken the mark of the beast. So she's arrested for that latter reason, hooked up to a guillotine, and then something happens, some disaster strikes, and the compound she's in gets deserted or something, and she's left alone, hooked up to this guillotine. And a storm comes, and the guillotine blade is about to come loose while she's strapped.
Which also, like, that's bad design, guillotine design. Like, I've not built any myself, but like, if like some wind can like be like, oh yeah, we're gonna drop this 50-pound blade like on your
a little precarious.
Like, it's just gonna accidentally fall. Like, that's a problem. That's a design flaw.
Yeah, it's been a couple of years since I've seen it. I might not remember all the details of what exactly happened, but it's not supposed to make sense. It's not supposed to make sense anyway. So she tries to get the old salvation prayer out before the blade falls, but she's just a little bit too late. And down the blade comes, and she goes straight to hell.
Oh my god!
Oh, they actually like send her to hell?
Yeah, it's implied.
Oh my gosh! I love that.
I love it.
There's
I love it.
In fundamentalist Christianity, there's a strange belief that salvation has to be ritualized. Like, you have to recite a certain kind of prayer. It doesn't have to be the exact, it doesn't have to be the same prayer for everybody, but it has to, in broad brush outline, in general features, it has to be,
because that's how much God loves you. If you don't say that you love him in just the right way,
you have to like die the right way. Like,
well, it's what's called the salvation prayer, and it's not exactly the same among everybody, but it has the same basic features to it. Admitting that you're a sinner and asking Jesus to come into your heart because you believe he died on the cross for you. Blah 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 blah. You have to.
Are we not doing phrasing anymore?
No, we don't do phrasing, Dan. Jesus comes just
into your heart.
Everywhere.
Yeah, so it doesn't have to be verbal, but it does have to be a very what's the word I'm looking for? You do have to mentally go through it. You can't just believe. You actually have to do this prayer thing.
Wow. Yeah, so Christianity is awesome and makes people never worry about anything in their life, probably, because God is just loving, forgiving, merciful, and awesome. Wow.
Unless you live in Syria or
all that stuff. All right, so that's another podcast, how much of a dick God is. That we can do one every day for like the rest of our lives.
But we're the angry atheists, though, right?
Yeah, we're so awful.
Not the God that is causing
all that stuff.
So around the world.
Nathan. So if people want to find you on the internet, because we'll talk about death and destruction on another episode and how awful God is, and we'll get super angry. But so Nathan, if people want to, find your work, like we'll link to your awesome like post about your whole story. But where can they find your podcast? What's your Twitter name and all that stuff?
Well, my Twitter is @thenathiest, and that's just atheist spelled with an N at the beginning.
Awesome Twitter name.
Oh, thank you. And there's a story behind that. There was after I became an atheist and was talking to Christian apologist who was very down on me for becoming an atheist. He called me an atheist as an insult. And whenever we encountered each other online, he would always say, "Hey, the atheist is here."
It's like,
So
well, thanks for the rad Twitter name, dude. Like, that's awesome.
So, Trolling with Logic is our podcast that we do. It's trollingwithlogic.com, I believe. We're on iTunes and Podbean, and I think those are the platforms we're on.
The places
as far as that goes.
Awesome.
And I have a Facebook account, a personal Facebook account. You can add me there as a friend if you want.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for talking to us. And yeah, I'm sure, maybe we'll do some Trolling with Logic, Science Enthusiast crossovers in the future. Watch a bad movie or something, Yeah. All right.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
And we are going to continue this on YouTube. You can find the link up in the description. Thanks, guys, for watching. For our Facebook followers, at least.
Yeah, I think some people watched.
But the YouTube followers, we don't care about you guys. Fuck you guys. Now that we're on Facebook.
Fuck everybody else.
We had somebody just going crazy in the comment section.
Really?
And then the last thing they said, "I've got to get off." I'm reading what they said, their words. "I've got to get off for church, but I'd love to have more of my comments unacknowledged." We're doing a fucking show, dude.
What are we supposed to do?
Well, I'm oh, ooh, that's what? How you almost lose your microphone because I'm cat.
So was it a Christian that was talking?
I assume so.
Yeah.
They said debatable. As a Christian, parenthesis, believer in God. Thank you for specifying what otherwise would not have known. That does give a meaning. He gives us free will to choose our meaning. While he has a bigger plan for us, it's up to us whether we want to take his meaning or choose our own.
Okay.
So we do have free will, but we don't. But we do. But we don't.
Well,
we have free will to choose our meaning, but he has a bigger plan. So we have free will to choose our own meaning, but God has already chosen our meaning for us. And if we don't follow God's meaning,
because if there is a God who is both omniscient and omnipotent, which by itself is impossible to be both. But let's just take omniscience by itself. If God is omniscient, then free will can't exist because he knows what everybody's going to do.
But that's why he gave you free will, is because he wants to see if he guessed right. And he does every time, I guess. And then they had a couple comments that were just a response to something we just said. But then we have a longer one here.
The distortions I've heard when I ask Christians whether God can change his mind or not is amazing.
Really, see, I just don't understand how people still can cling to it though and believe. I don't know. I guess it gets so ingrained though, right? And
yeah. Well, see, in April we've got a neurobiologist coming on our show to talk about the psychology and the neural basis of religious belief and where the biology of where spiritual experiences come from and how they explain it. And he's got a really interesting hypothesis for the persistence of religious belief. So that's John Waithe.
Oh, was that a tease?
That's a good podcast tease. All right. Well, thank you, Nathan, for doing this with us. We appreciate it. These stories are super interesting to me. People who became reasonable and were
Yeah, I love stories like that as well.
No, religion is kind of bullshit, and yeah.
But we didn't have anyone sniffing, or that's just what I imagine the rabbis do with panties, is sniff them. But I should say inspecting them. We didn't have that. We didn't have So we
No,
didn't
there-
talk about
there
church
was-
cover-up of sexual abuse. So, I mean,
This is
kind of tangentially, whatever
so
that word.
That word.
Talked about semen. Didn't exactly like spit it out, but
God
a
damn
little
you.
disappointed.
There. Let's leave on a high. Let's leave on the semen spitting. That's what the audience likes.
I
put that in
didn't
the
say that.
outtake.
Those are your words. Those are your words. Yeah, I gotta write that down, or else I'm gonna forget it.
What? The people come for the cum? Yeah, I know.
1, 3, 25.
All right.
So, all right. Well, thank
Cool.
you for watching us here, and I guess I'll hit the stop button.